every industry that have been run for many years, and in the case of real estate, is one of the oldest industries. And when you see that has been run by the same way or similar ways for a long period of time, I think it's ready for some disruption. But disruption is not about destroying the industry. It's just providing more tools and enabling customers to do things in different ways. You can make, I think, the mistake of spending too much thinking when you are starting on to raise capital, whereas you should only be thinking on creating a great product that people love. I think it's more about the team, yourself, how much do you believe in your vision, how passionate you are. At the same time, you are very selective with your co-founder. You don't take it for granted. The same it should be, with investors that you bring in. Right?
Dear listeners, welcome to Venture Ahead, University's Entrepreneurship Podcast. I am Samantha Zorn, your host for today. We are very excited to have Alejandro Artacho with us today, the CEO of Spotahome. Alejandro, welcome. We're very happy to have you here today. Alejandro, you studied law in IE University, and you also did a program.
Not in the university, on the law school.
IE University Law School,
yeah.
Correct. And then you had a program also with the IE MBA, correct?
Yeah, it was back in the day, 2012-13. It was called the ILLM. I don't know what's the name today. And they had a module of MBA. So, yeah.
Perfect. And then after that, you already had an entrepreneurship. And from there, and from your experience in IE, Spotahome was created. Could you give us a brief background?
The story was I had, so prior to IE, so I studied university at ICA here in Madrid, but I finished university in China and I set up a couple of businesses there, but they were not internet related. It was not sexy business. It was selling red wine, olive oil in China, and then I had like a luxury travel agency for Chinese executives that were coming here to Europe with their families and all that. So running those two for a few years, then I had to shut them down, came back to Europe. I was like 25 back then when I came back to Europe. And I was looking to professionalize a little bit my background because after being in China doing all this stuff, and I was looking to study a master's. I found the master's at IE, that it was the international law, which I could combine with my Chinese experience as I was doing export, import and all that. And then I was interested in the module of MBA, although we didn't have many subjects around economics and all that, but it was for me like kind of having a leg into the business school without being there. And the thing is that when we started, we heard about Venture Lab and startups and everything that I was doing back in the days there. Today, you guys are doing a lot more. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
So back in the day, I had an idea of a startup, and I think it was already only 1 week since we started the masters. And then I brought that idea into Venture Lab. No law student ever before entered into the Venture Lab, so we're the first one coming there. Set up a small team with some of my classmates, and then actually my current co-founder of Spotahome, Brian, who was not at IE, and he was my co-founder of that business, so they allowed him to be in Area 31, and that's how it started. But then it was a different business. It was international job related, and then we learned a lot about startups, get very inspired, and then during the process we saw a bigger opportunity. I was talking with the founders of a student accommodation platform in Portugal. We went to a startup competition there, got finalists in the startup competition, and then met these founders. They were looking for someone to launch their business in London, so moved to London to help the guys out there. They were raising capital, and that's how I got into real estate, and that is where all the Spotahome idea came into place, and we set it up.
Amazing.
In 2014.
Amazing. That is a brief background, and I would love to delve more into details later. But first, I wanted to ask you a question that we ask all of our guests, and it is, what phrase or word or feeling gets you motivated to start your day or thought?
My day.
Your day.
My day, feeling,
Thought.
no, it's about freedom, I guess.
Perfect. And do you have any phrase that you say to yourself before starting your day? What keeps you motivated for
The
that?
thing is that now I have a baby that wakes me up, so I
So
don't even have time to think.
the mornings are the
Phrase.
worst.
No, I just flow.
You just look perfect. So now,
Life should be that structure.
yes, I was thinking more of a just do it or something like that, but I guess
No, I go with the flow.
I go with the flow. I love that. Go with the flow. Well, so I going more on the technical side and on the entrepreneurship side, what inspired you to start Spotahome? As you said, I know you were an entrepreneur, and for me, it is a sexy area, the wine business and the olive oil business. But what inspired you to go into the real estate area? What inspired you to start Spotahome?
Well, it wasn't about the real estate area itself. I think I always had an entrepreneurial mindset, from the early days. I remember when I was a kid and we were doing a bunch of movies with my friends. I was always the director of the movies, and during university, setting up different groups of people to do different stuff. I just like doing things, and then if I have an idea and then I get a little bit inspired and I'm motivated about the idea, I just want to execute and try it out. And that's the same that we do today internally at Spotahome. You have ideas and we have some resources to allocate to those ideas to try out. Those are the things that actually excites me the most today in Spotahome. So I guess here, what inspired me is that I saw an opportunity. What inspired me, I think it was that when I went to London, the rental experience in London was as bad as it was in China, but the process was exactly the same. The same in Mexico, the same in the US, Portugal. It's the same everywhere, right? You have these classifieds, you have real estate agents, you gotta go and see the properties, and most of the time they show you the same properties because the ads are fake. So it's a lengthy process. So then I was like, how is it possible that you can rent accommodation for a short period of time online, and then you cannot do that for a longer period? So that's really, and I was like, okay, somebody has to change this. And the vision of Spotahome is way broader. It's not only about people moving abroad and booking a house without seeing it for a few months. It's more about digitizing all the services of real estate. And really, when I recruited my co-founders, what I was telling them is that it's surprising that you go in the high street and you don't find travel agencies as you used to see, because all the efforts and services that travel agencies were doing on paper, physically, they have been replaced by digital products and platforms that they have been enabling more and more vertical services into it. So, but if you walk in the street, you see a bunch of real estate agents and a bunch of posters with to rent, to sell, and all that is very old school still today.
Yes.
So I told my co-founders, one day these real estate agents, they won't be in the street.
No.
Definitely are going to be different, but they are not going to be in the street, and you're not going to be facing a real estate agent to do your stuff. So eventually you're going to be buying, selling houses anywhere in the world within seconds, the same that you order, whatever.
So it is more the digitalization of real estate that inspired you. But how did you see that space? How did you envision when it didn't really exist when you started it? Because I know that for an entrepreneur, what we get taught a lot is to be able to identify challenges, but sometimes it's really hard, and challenges and opportunities, but sometimes it's really hard to identify those opportunities if it's still not tangible, if it still doesn't exist. So how did you go about and identifying that and making some idea that some might think was not possible?
I see it simply. I think every industry that have been run for many years, and in the case of real estate is one of the oldest industries. And when you see that has been run by the same way or similar ways for a long period of time, I think it's ready for some disruption. But disruption is not about destroying the industry. It's just providing more tools and enabling customers to do things in different ways. Still there are going to be a bunch of people that want to see the house, and they don't want to commit online without seeing the house in person to do certain things. That will always happen.
Correct.
The same that people still go and buy shoes on physical stores, right? Or go to the supermarket physically to do their own stuff. All of those things you can do online, but still you go to restaurants, right? But it's a matter of creating more choice for customers. And then you have seen real estate. Before it was all physical real estate agents, but then you have classified sites, marketplaces, and then they are still running. They're huge, massive companies, and but then you gotta add on more services to those markets. But that's something that motivates me when you see that traditional industries and you see the actors in those industries, they get very comfy on their positions. Then I like that. When you're meeting with people that they have been 30 years in an industry and you're doing something new and suddenly you are putting their company upside down by new things, I like that.
That's
but that is more
exciting
ego
space.
than other stuff.
Ego, disrupting. No, that is exciting. Were there all other companies that were trying to disrupt the same way you were at the time?
Yeah, it's many. And when we started, it was the Portuguese guys as well. But then we started to see a lot of competition. Then we knew that there were some other companies, so they actually copied our model, and then we started to have competition in every single country that we have been in. And they don't even bother to change the design on their site. They take our design, everything, and even our logo, and they just change it slightly, the name.
Wow.
But yeah, tons of competition.
Yeah, and aside from competition, what were other challenges that you had while initially setting up Spotahome, and how did you
Well, the
overcome
first one
them?
was convincing landlords that people would rent without seeing the house in person. And I remember actually the day that we launched, I was in the one of the offices at IE for the student accommodation. I don't remember the name, but I was showing the staging, which is it was in production. It wasn't live, the site. It was our own internal designs. It was in development, but it wasn't ready to launch. But still, you could actually show to customers how it would work, right? So I remember there showing to the people at the office, do you think your students would use a service like that? I was showing them the videos that we do of the properties. And one student came in looking for accommodation. He was from the US, and I said, hey, look, we had 9 properties back then. So I showed him some of the videos of the properties, and I was like, would you rent without seeing the house in person if we gave you all the information and guarantees? And he said, yeah, I would do it because it's a nightmare to find accommodation here. I don't speak the language and all that stuff. So then I called Brian and I said, Brian, launch the site now. And he was like, hey, we don't even have a payment platform. And we said, well, we'll put a personal PayPal for now and to make it work. And then that's how we launched, right? So it was, at the beginning, it was a lot of convincing. Landlords didn't believe us. So the first 9 properties to put on the site, it took us like a month to convince, and now we have listed in the last 10 years more than 300,000 properties on the site. So you start to see the curve exponentially as more landlords join. Then we are humans. You see. You won't go to a party that you are the only one in the party. Right?
So you would say that the primary strategy used by Spotahome was to getting people on board in order to instill trust, because I feel like for these types of companies, trust is very important. So getting trust from customers and getting trust from landlords was your hardest challenge from what I'm hearing. Yeah,
that was the core actually when we were working on the core values at the beginning, my co-founders and I. That's the first word. And the only one that we wrote, it was trust, and it takes still today, it takes a lot of development to build on trust.
And would you say that's also a contributing factor for Spotahome's expansion? Because as you said, now there's more than 300,000 landlords that have their apartments in your...
Well, no landlords.
Apartments. Okay.
But that we have published over time. Now live, there are 110,000.
What other factors contributed to that rapid expansion of Spotahome, do you believe?
Well, great team, obviously. So we started out building up the team and getting the people on sales. And at the beginning, these people, they were like getting the properties, and then we were giving commission on the revenue generated by their own properties. So in reality, they were doing sales account management, and also operations of bookings in one place, and we build up the supply very quickly, and then you start to build functions, because then you have supply but you're lacking demand, so you need to build on demand. So it's a matchmaking platform, right? So then it's the leveling of supply and demand, which is always a challenge, because when you grow fast, then it's the different channels, acquisitions, many of them you have to pay. So
that's so interesting, and I think it's very relevant what you said about the team, and it's very relevant for people who are trying to start their entrepreneurship, because finding the right people sometimes may be very hard in order to make like a strong team in your new company. What would you say that you spotted in the people that you can say that it's a great team or it's a great person working for me? What made you call them?
It depends on the phase of the company. At the beginning, I just wanted people who had ambition, hunger, a lot of energy. And we had to put the passion, and obviously they would build their own passion themselves afterwards. But that's really what I was looking for. Not necessarily seniority. Most of them, they were junior people that wanted to learn. And then as you go, then you start to you need more specific knowledge in different areas. At least in our case, so we started to hire people with some specific knowledge in places, and then depending on the cash that you have, you can pay more or less, so that will bring the different levels of seniority. But also you cannot bring, in our case, we're building up seniority as we went, because we were doing it that way. I would argue if I started now, that maybe we have more experience today, then I would bring more seniority from the beginning, but again, it will depend on the cash that you have. And then from those teams at the beginning, we were like hiring people, junior people, but then at least I was trying to identify leaders among those groups, and then we were lucky enough from the beginning, you hire the first 10, so try to identify at least 1 or 2 leaders that can grow with the company there. So then those 2 actually could help us scale to the next 10 or 20 more people, and like that. So we built a team of almost 400 people in 3.5 years, and it was all from people that we hired with leader experience that were growing with the business. But then it's about the speed at which they are growing, because the business was tripling and quadrupling revenue every year. So everyone, including myself, had to grow very quickly, because otherwise the company would catch you up. So in my case, I surrounded myself with a bunch of mentors, advisors, and all of that to try for me to learn very quickly. I was reading a lot, watching a bunch of videos, listening to podcasts just to learn. And I was encouraging everyone to do that, but especially my team and the leaders of the organization to grow very quickly, because really what I wanted is for them to help them out to grow quickly. And then unfortunately, and it happens in many startups, is the startup grows so fast and the leader doesn't grow as fast, and then organically you see the needs changing for the next phase, right? And then you gotta be able to make the changes, and then replacing, for new people, more seniority, more different knowledge.
Amazing. Well, when you already had your team made and you had like that, I want to hear more about like the outside. How did you attract investors? How did you get them to invest in you? I think that's a question that all the ones that are starting our entrepreneurs.
Well, so first of all, you don't need to raise capital to be an entrepreneur. So
I love that.
So actually looking backwards, or what I tell founders now that they are starting and everything is, forget about fundraising for now, because then you can make, I think, the mistake of spending too much thinking when you are starting on to raise capital, whereas you should only be thinking on creating a great product that people love, and then obviously you would need some money maybe, to launch the product, create it, and all of that. But if you do that, you don't need to go to institutional investors right away. You can find people to back you up, and you don't need large amounts of capital, especially today, with all the new technologies. So I would bootstrap as much as I could and only raise capital if it's strictly necessary, and always raise less than what you think you need, because it forces you to be more scrappy and And
To
ultimately,
budget correctly.
yeah, and be efficient, and efficiency is going to be rewarded eventually. Otherwise, you raise a bunch of capital and then you just grow without efficiencies, and someday you will pay for them, eventually. But to answer to your question, it depends on the phase. So at the beginning, obviously, you have nothing, so you only have your persona, but ideas, doesn't matter much. I think it's more about the team, yourself, how much do you believe in your vision, how passionate you are, and then obviously you gotta have some numbers to back it up. But then also the numbers depend on the trend, right? When I started, it was a balance of growth with maybe not burning too much cash. Today it's all about not burning and having a bit positive numbers, but then I went through only growth. Nobody cared about economics, margins, or anything like that. So it will depend, and also the stage. It's very difficult for pre-seed investors to be looking at business plans, because nobody's going to believe on that. They're only going to believe in you and what you want to build, right? And it's a bet on you as a founder at the beginning. And then you started to have some track record, and then investors are going to start looking for different stuff. That in our case it was growth at a scale most of the years, and then it shifted to unit economics, in the last years. Yeah, and I would say that it also depends on the investor. So there are no two equal investors. So, I would do research on the kind of investor that you want, and then depending on the investor, then they will want different types of things. So I would do the pre-work myself, because at the end you're partnering up with someone, and you gotta be sure about partnering up, because it's a long-term partnership, and then you gotta make sure with who are you gonna partner. The same that you are very selective with your co-founder. You don't take it for granted. The same it should be, with investors that you bring in. Right?
So we're going into our last segment, which is called Entrepreneurs Inbox, where we get students' questions, and there's some dynamic questions from our listeners, and we just want to see. We'll ask 2 questions and see how you respond. But the first one is, can you share a mistake you made in your entrepreneurial journey and what you learned from it? One, and the biggest, I think. Let me add that.
The biggest mistake. I think the biggest mistake was, so after we raised our Series B round, that it was a $40 million round, then I was very committed to change all my C-level. So I had 14 people reporting to me. There were 14 people that have worked with me between 3-4 years, some of them since we started. And then I felt that I didn't get all the answers. I was constantly trying to figure out how to do 100x from the point that we were, and I could feel maybe there was a lack of seniority. So I went to hire 6 new C-levels, and I went to hire very senior people, but they were coming from these big tech companies. They have senior positions in those big tech companies. And one investor of mine told me, dude, you are putting too much cacao powder in the cup and no milk. So that's never gonna mix. So I was bringing a lot of seniority that was gonna bring a lot of changes into the business, and I did it very fast. So in 6 months, I hired everyone. I went around the world to bring all the people into the company. And that changed the culture completely, because also the 6 C-level, they brought, I think, 43 new people that they were, senior, I guess, in paper, but all coming from big companies. And really what I needed is people coming from 0 that were able to go from 0 to 1, not from 1 to... And these were people that only had experience from 1 to 2, or even some of them from 100 to 200, in the very well-established companies already. So, and this was hard, it's not that I'm blaming them, I think the mistake was on me. And then what I learned is that you gotta bring, balance the right type of seniority with executional power themselves, that you don't need to hire people to do the job. but you can do the job yourself, you know. And if you didn't have any team, actually you could, make the function work, right, and deliver results. So.
Perfect. No, I really love that, and you learned from it, and you moved from it. Correct. So, then our last question is: are there any new features or services you're excited about that will be launching soon in Spotahome?
So we launched two products that I think we are the only, especially one of them, we are the only ones providing that. It's more for landlords now, but it's so across Europe. So we are now in 26 countries. So we are providing full guarantee of rent for landlords across all different countries, and so full rent guarantee. The 5th of the month, we transfer the rent to the landlord, regardless whether the tenant pays or not. We just figure all that part out, and then we give a bunch of guarantees to landlords. So we do that. I think we didn't find other services that they can do global vetting of tenants and scoring. So we had to build it ourselves. We have been, in the last 12 months or so, we have guaranteed more than 40 million euros already in rentals, and then from over 100, how many were there? No, like 85 or 90 different nationalities, I think. But we are covering, we have customers from all over the world besides North Korea. So that is one, and the second one is called All In, and it's full property management. Landlords give us the keys, and we handle absolutely everything for them. So yeah.
An expansion outside of Europe? I know we touched a little bit.
We are doing an expansion now. So we are going from 104 cities to slightly over 900 cities in the next 2 months. But it's going to be all in Europe, because also another thing is that I'd rather be number one in Europe than be number 2 or 3 in multiple places. So, and it's a lot to do in Europe. It's still a big market, and we have still lots to go.
Well, I'm excited to see where it goes. Thank you, Alejandro, for your time, and thank you for being here. I have
in the sunny cubicle at 50 degrees.
Yes, thank you for bearing with me. I've learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners learned so much.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Great job.
Thank you. We're on all platforms. Please subscribe, and hopefully we'll get to talk in the future in our podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Great
Thank
post.
you so much.
Thank you.